My sister Allison has always had a way of making things go her way. It's like she was born with a silver tongue, able to charm, manipulate, and twist any situation to her advantage. As the younger sibling, I often found myself getting the short end of the stick. Growing up, I would brush it off as sibling rivalry, but now that we're adults, her entitled attitude has taken on a whole new meaning. This time, she's after something bigger than ever before. Our parents' house. Our parents, Richard and Diane, have been living in the same house for over 30 years. It's the place where Allison and I grew up, where we celebrated birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. It holds so much history for all of us. But now that our parents are nearing retirement, the question of what to do with the house has become more pressing. Allison, of course, has made it clear that she thinks she should get it. It all started a few months ago when our dad had a minor health scare. He recovered, thankfully, but it got our parents thinking about the future and how they wanted to downsize. The house had become too much for them to manage, and they wanted something smaller, easier to take care of. I thought we'd have a family discussion about how to handle the sale or splitting things evenly, but Allison had other plans. One evening, my phone rang, and it was Allison. Her tone was all too familiar, sweet, but with an edge that told me something was coming. "So, I've been thinking," she started, her voice dripping with false innocence. "You know how Mom and Dad are planning to downsize? Well, I've talked to them, and I think it makes the most sense for me to take the house." I nearly dropped the phone. "What? Why would they give you the house?" "Relax, Kyle," she said with a laugh, as if I was overreacting. "You know they've always wanted to keep it in the family, and it just makes sense for me to have it. I mean, I've got a family to take care of now, and you've got your own place. Besides, you live out of state. It's not like you'd even be here to take care of it." I couldn't believe the audacity. "Allison, I'm just as much a part of this family as you are. You can't just decide to take the house because it's convenient for you." "Convenient?" she repeated, as if the word offended her. "Kyle, I'm trying to be practical. Mom and Dad need to downsize, and I need a bigger place for my kids. It's not like you need the house." I could feel my blood boiling. I had a job in another city, true, but that didn't mean I had no connection to the house, or that I didn't deserve a share of it. "It's not about need, Allison. This is about fairness. If the house is going to be sold, the money should be split evenly between us." There was a pause, and then she sighed dramatically, as if I was being unreasonable. "Kyle, you're single. You don't have kids. What would you even do with the house? It would be wasted on you. My family needs it. I'm not trying to be selfish, but come on. You know it makes more sense for me to have it." The entitlement in her voice was too much. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to suggest that just because she had kids, she was more deserving of the house. I had worked hard for everything I had, and I wasn't going to let her take this from me. "We need to talk to Mom and Dad," I said firmly. "This isn't something you can just decide on your own." "Fine," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "But don't expect them to side with you. They know what's best for everyone." The conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth, but I wasn't about to let Allison bulldoze her way into getting everything she wanted. This time, I was going to fight for what was right. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Allison, the way she spoke, so sure of herself, so confident that she could just waltz in and claim the house. It was infuriating. But what bothered me more was the idea that she had already talked to our parents about it. If Mom and Dad were on board with her plan, then this was going to be a much bigger fight than I had anticipated. The next weekend, I drove down to visit my parents. I wanted to hear from them directly, to see if Allison was telling the truth, or if she was just pulling her usual stunts. When I arrived, Mom was in the kitchen, humming along to some oldies on the radio while she prepared lunch. Dad was in his favorite recliner, flipping through channels but not really watching anything. "Hey, Kyle," Mom greeted me warmly, wiping her hands on a towel before giving me a hug. "We weren't expecting you today. What a nice surprise." I wanted to talk to you and Dad about something, I said, trying to sound casual even though my nerves were starting to get the better of me. Mom's smile faltered a bit, sensing that something was up. Okay, what's on your mind? We sat down at the kitchen table, and I dove straight into it. Allison called me. She said you guys are thinking of downsizing and that she's going to get the house. Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, who leaned forward in his chair, frowning. We haven't made any decisions yet, Kyle, Dad said slowly. But yes, we have talked about it with Allison. She mentioned that with the kids it would make sense for her to have the house. And what about me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't I get a say in this? Of course you do, Mom said quickly, looking flustered. We just assumed that since you're settled in your own place and with your job being out of state, you wouldn't be as interested. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, just because I don't live nearby or have kids, I'm automatically less entitled to the house? That's not fair. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Kyle, we're not trying to exclude you. We're just trying to figure out what makes the most sense. The house is a lot of work, and Allison always gets what she wants, I interrupted, my frustration boiling over. She's been manipulating you both for years, and now she's trying to make it seem like she's doing you a favor by taking the house. Meanwhile, I'm the one left out because my life doesn't fit her narrative. Mom's eyes softened with guilt. That's not what we meant, honey. We're just trying to find a solution that works for everyone. Well, this isn't working for me, I said, standing up. I'm not going to let her take the house without at least having a real discussion about it. I've been just as much a part of this family as Allison, and I deserve to be treated equally. Mom and Dad exchanged another look, and I could see the weariness in their faces. They didn't want to be in the middle of this, but the truth was, Allison had already put them there. I think we all need to sit down and talk about this together, Dad said finally. You, me, your mom, and Allison. We'll figure something out that's fair for both of you. It wasn't exactly the resolution I was hoping for, but it was a start. At least they were acknowledging that my opinion mattered. But I knew that getting Allison to agree to anything that didn't involve her walking away with everything was going to be a challenge. The following week, we all gathered at the house, me, Allison, and our parents. The tension in the room was thick from the moment we sat down. Allison was already wearing that smug, self-satisfied look that drove me crazy. She knew she had been the favored child for years, and she was counting on that to get her through this. Dad cleared his throat and began. So your mom and I have been thinking a lot about what's best for everyone. We love you both, and we want to make sure that whatever happens, it's fair. That's why we think it's important to hear from both of you about how you feel about the house. Allison jumped in first, of course. I've already said that it makes sense for me to have the house. I've got the kids, and it's a perfect space for them to grow up in. Plus, I'm right here, so I can keep the house in the family. I rolled my eyes, but before I could respond, she continued. Kyle has a great job out of state, and he's doing fine on his own. He doesn't need this house the way I do. I'm just thinking practically. Practically? I shot back, my voice rising. You mean you're thinking about what's best for you, like you always do. Just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I don't care about the house or that I don't deserve a fair share. Allison crossed her arms, her expression defiant. I'm not being selfish, Kyle. I'm thinking about what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone, or what's best for you? The room grew quiet for a moment, and I could see the frustration building in Allison's face. She was used to getting her way, used to people agreeing with her because she had a way of making her needs seem like the most important. But I wasn't backing down this time. Kyle's right, Dad finally said, his voice steady. This isn't about who needs the house more. It's about making sure that both of you are treated fairly. Allison shot me a glare. Fair? Dad, it's not fair to just split things when Kyle's already got everything he needs. I'm trying to do what's right for my family. And what about me? I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. What about the fact that I've been busting my back for years, working hard for everything I've got? Just because I'm not married with kids doesn't mean I don't deserve a say in what happens with this house. Mom leaned forward, her eyes full of concern. We don't want this to come between you two. We just want to do what's right. And what's right, I said firmly, is that we both benefit from this equally. Allison, you can't just take the house because it suits your plans. That's not how this works. Allison sat back, her arms crossed tightly. So what? You want to sell the house? Make us all homeless just so you can get your piece? Her words stung, but I didn't let them show on my face. If selling the house is what it takes to make sure things are fair, then yeah, I think that's what we should do. Or we figure out a way to split it in a way that works for both of us. The tension in the room was palpable. I could tell my parents were torn. They didn't want to upset either of us, but they also couldn't deny that Allison's entitlement had gone too far. We could sell the house, Mom said slowly, as if the idea was new to her. We could split the money, and you both could use it for whatever you need, whether it's for Allison's family or Kyle's future plans. Allison's face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous. You can't just sell the house. It's been in the family for years. And it's not just your family, Allison, I said, my voice steady but firm. It's our family. This isn't just about you. She stood up abruptly, glaring down at me. Fine, do whatever you want. Sell the house, take the money, ruin everything. I hope you're happy, Kyle. With that, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The echo of it reverberated through the house, leaving an awkward silence in its wake. I let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the confrontation settle over me. I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't want to be at odds with my sister, but I also couldn't let her bulldoze me the way she had our whole lives. I'm sorry, Kyle, Mom said softly, her voice full of guilt. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you two. It's not your fault, I said, shaking my head. This has been building for years. Allison's always been like this, and I've just let her get away with it. But I'm done doing that. Dad stood up and placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, son. We'll figure this out. Over the next few weeks, things remained tense between Allison and me. She refused to speak to me, sending passive-aggressive texts to our parents about how I was ruining the family and how selling the house was a betrayal. But my parents stood firm, recognizing that this was the only way to be fair to both of us. Eventually, the house was put on the market. It was hard for all of us to watch it go. It held so many memories, so much history. But I knew that selling it was the right thing to do. My parents needed a smaller place, and splitting the proceeds evenly between Allison and me was the only way to ensure fairness. When the house finally sold, I expected a blow-up from Allison. But instead, she went quiet. She accepted her half of the money without a word, and I did the same. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for. We still weren't speaking, and I wasn't sure if we ever would. But at least, for once in my life, I had stood up to her. I hadn't let her take everything like she always had. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Allison had bought a new house for her family. She was still living her entitled life, and I had no doubt that she still blamed me for ruining things. But I had no regrets. I had used my share of the money to invest in my future, focusing on the life I wanted to build for myself. It wasn't a mansion or a family home, but it was mine, and that was enough. In the end, I realized that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family. It meant valuing myself enough to demand fairness. And while Allison may never understand that, I knew I had done the right thing. For the first time, I wasn't backing down. And that was all that mattered.